where your island dreams come true.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of Thought That Get Results. I'm Reverend Weber Herbert, and as per usual, we're here every Tuesday evening with something that at least we think is of community interest and or of some concern. And if you think that you have something that fits into that category, you'd like to find out how you can be a part of the program, well, why don't you drop us a line, address it to a Let's Talk program in care of Vaughan Radio, P.O. Box 195, Charlestown in Nevis, or give us a call. Our numbers are 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. And by the way, those will be the numbers you'll use to be a part of this evening's discussion. Thank you all again for joining us. This is your voice in the community, Thought That Get Results. With regard to your participation in the show, we encourage you to call in on the numbers listed, 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. Here's a suggestion. You have a question or comment, perhaps you can get a pencil, piece of paper, write it down so that you're well organized. And when you get on the show, you take as little time as possible so that we can accommodate as many of you as we can. We ask only, first of all, you respect yourselves and then respect others, because we will not accept anything we deem not within our broadcast standards, but we encourage you to always be forceful with your point. Thank you all again. You can see the video stream on our YouTube channel. You go to YouTube, you type in Vaughan Radio, click subscribe, and you've got this program live, or you can follow us on our Facebook page at Vaughan Radio. Thank you all again. Tonight, Edric W. Stanley, good evening.
Good evening, Rebo, and good evening to my fellow panelists. Good evening to the people of St. Kitts, and more particularly the gracious people of Nevis. And of course, we always look forward to saying things to our people who listen to us on the World Wide Web, Facebook, and YouTube. And therefore, we hope they would continue to listen, and I hope who have not yet heard that our program begins at 7 rather than at 8 o'clock. So those who haven't heard, could you please pass the word on that one of their favorite programs, which is the Let's Talk program, starts at 7, and of course we sometimes ask Weber to give us a little extra. Or Let's Talk program, our favorite program. Weber.
Dr. Patricia Bartlett, good evening.
Good evening, Webo, and thanks for the invitation to join you. Good evening to you, Mr. Stanley. Good evening to the entire listening and viewing audiences. And I would like to especially say good evening to Mr. Hobson, wherever you are. Good. It has been a while we haven't seen you here. I'm hoping that maybe things would change at some point. You would get a chance to come out and spend some time with us. And of course, to my good husband there in the UK.
All right, let's do it this way. Dr. Bartlett, what we've got?
I usually don't have anything.
Okay. Stanley, what we've got?
I would say that the Premier had a meeting regarding the private sector, and some people say that he doesn't do anything, but I know that every leader, should I say every leader, but let's say those of us, those leaders that we have in St. Kitts and Nevis, I think they try hard to do well for the country and all its peoples. And the Premier had a private sector meeting, and I think it went very well, and he's attempting to re-energize our private sector with the hope that during the COVID-19 and the lockdown and all that that has impacted us so adversely, leaders like the Honorable Mark Brantley are trying to find ways to jumpstart our economy and to get things back on track to prior COVID. But I'm hoping that things will be fruitful in the efforts that we all try to put forward. LIAT is back on the agenda with regard to, again, that back and forth between Barbados and Antigua. But again, I hope that we will be able to find some solution to the Liat problem, because some people look at it only from an economic point of view. But I believe, based on the fact that it has been an airline that has served this region very well with regard to transporting our peoples back and forth throughout the region, they have in fact done a marvelous job with reference to safety. And in my view, that should be first and foremost. And once it is first and foremost, I think everything else will fall in line. The regional governments, they should fulfill their obligation to ensure that that airline remains a viable airline in this region. There are other competitors who want to get in, to in fact transport our people, but they have no real track record as compared to Liat, and as a result, I'm hoping, although the private sector should always be open to competition, I hope that leaders would find the monies to be able to keep Liat going and to again transport our people safely. I listened and heard that the CDC of the United States has given us a favorable shot, more or less, regarding the COVID-19 and what has happened around the world, and make the comparison with St. Kitts and Nevis, and it seems as though we have done remarkably well, and I hope that we will always, by the help of God, continue on that path where we have no deaths and we continue to keep things somewhat on the right track and to keep our people healthy. Let us continue to do what you're doing and seek to find out additional information so as to keep all of us safe. In my view, this is going to be a long haul with regard to this pandemic. And in this regard, we have to touch base with every avenue that we can, every sphere that we can, every institution that we can, with reference to keeping our people safe and keep our islands, two islands, and island nation as a choice place to come. Webber, I'll leave it there at this juncture.
Yeah, Dr. Bartlett, you like to comment on any of the things you mentioned?
Well, the latter part of his presentation, I would like to comment here as it relates to our COVID-free. Well, let me not say that. As it relates to our COVID status. Stanley did mention that well, he's appealing to our officials to keep doing what they have been doing, but in that he needs to understand as well that what we have been doing is we have not been importing people, to put it mildly. So once we open the borders, and that is what we're getting set to do, well, I think it's just a matter of a couple of weeks now before we open our borders. That is where the test is going to lie. It's going to test how strong, whatever, modalities we have put in place, whatever they are. And I'm still not getting enough information that I could feel comfortable. I can't speak on it because I don't have any information as to, what the protocol is going to be. I've been on social media. I've seen, I've been scouring to see if I could find anything. The only thing that I think I came up with was as it relates to the private home owners, and quarantine would be allowed, I understand now, at private homes. Well, of course, they have to meet, pre-arrival conditions as well as when they get here. I think they would have to go to the regular protocol. Plus, they'll have to be paying for. I understand they'll have to be paying for security. That is, I'm not so sure if the security is going to be provided by government or it's just going to be security that is screened and approved by government. But I understand that is a part of the protocol. What I'm hoping, and well, in addition to that, I would have heard that our officials, as it relates to our frontline workers, would be making the necessary checks. And I'm hoping that this would be virtual. I'm hoping that our officials, frontline officials, as it relates to the nurses or whomever they're going to be using to go, I'm hoping that it will be virtual. I'm hoping they'll be able to just pick up a phone and video chat with these people to find what their status is instead of going from home to home and the exposure associated with that. So I'm hoping, like I said, I haven't heard the details. I'm only hearing, little, bits and pieces here and there. So I'm just appealing to whomever is listening for some consideration to be given to checking up on the people who are in quarantine in their homes in a virtual way rather than exposing our frontline workers. In addition to what we are hearing locally, the status as it relates to the BVI, I know that we had spoken about it last time I was here. It seems like there has been an explosion of cases there relative to what there would have been a couple of weeks ago. And I'm hearing that they're having estimates as high as 1,500 possible COVID cases in the BVI. Now, if that is the case, that is really something that we need to be in tune with, and maybe we need to follow that closely to see how things develop there, and it might be something that we could be guided by. I think that is as much as I would want to say now. I think every day people are talking about COVID, and we just can't be too careful, and I just reiterate what I would have said the last time. This is not something for us to be playing with. It's something for us to be very serious about, and we have to follow the science. Wherever the science leads us, we must take, our advice from the scientists for the most part.
Well, the world has changed quite dramatically as a result of this pandemic. And some people may not be aware, some people may not want to understand and accept that the world has changed. And in that regard, they're hoping that it would be a short-term occurrence, and consequently they may not be affected. But based on what I have accepted with regard to this horrible disease, we have to be extremely careful going forward, and going forward for the long haul. As I earlier said, this is not going to be a short-term occurrence. This is not going to be a short-term disease based on what's going on. And in that regard, those of us who are living in St. Kitts and Nevis should prepare ourselves physically, emotionally, and mentally for the long haul, meaning for the next 10 years and maybe further, simply because of what I believe is occurring. Nobody knows who has it, and as the scientists are finding out more and more that many whom they thought never had it do have it, when they look at the age factors in terms of older as opposed to younger, they now find that younger people are just as susceptible to this disease as older people. And in that regard, we must begin to prepare ourselves. Again, like I said, the world has changed, and quite dramatically. And in that regard, we have to begin to prepare for the long haul. Well, we are in the midst of the hurricane season, as what I understood. And I don't like hurricanes at all. I tell you, they work me too. I have to work too hard when the announcements are made that we are having some kind of, weather change or weather pattern changes coming toward us. And in that regard, I am hoping that Nevis and St. Kitts in particular, and the region, and indeed the whole world, because it's a natural occurrence. But the Lord sees everything, and the Lord does have His mercies on all of us at certain times, and I'm hoping that we will be spared for the rest of the year based on the hurricane season. I'll leave it there, Webbo.
We're on the outskirts of the 37th anniversary of independence for St. Kitts and Nevis. And I'd just like your quick thoughts on the development of St. Kitts and Nevis over the past 37 years, not only with regards to infrastructure and buildings and so on, but in regards to human development.
I would say we have made giant leaps forward. Because if you were to look at our institutions, well, schools, and we've got college in St. Kitts, and we are hoping at some point in time we would have something larger than the sixth form college in Nevis. We are hoping that at some point in time we would find.
Yeah, but that's beyond the 37 though. Let's stick up to 37.
Well, like I said, based on the academic achievements that we have seen, a lot of people coming out of institutions of higher learning with higher education, and we could see the benefits because the internet has taken hold, and there are so many young people who have now gotten into that field in particular, who would have learned so much. So to tell you, we have grown exponentially in so many different ways. You said, well, let's not talk about the economics, but that of course is a vital factor. But like I said, when you look at our population, and the population, well, maybe the population has not grown as much as we would have liked, but still we got, as far as I understood, roughly 55,000 people in St. Kitts and Nevis, and we were able, over the long haul, to keep them fed, clothed, sheltered. And if you look at what some of our people are eating, wearing, and in terms of lifestyle and living, it tells you that we have made some giant steps forward. When you go along our roadways and byways, you'd see some of the structures that have been abandoned. And some people would say, well, boy, that's where people used to live. Yeah, sure. All of us had a little gingerbread house. I mean, that's how I sometimes describe them. And then we have moved from 1 room, 2 room, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rooms. Sometimes one person might believe in a 6-bedroom building. So when you make a comparison, we have made some giant strides, positive strides. And if you were to check the mental health of our people, now that we have the barometer to check it, I believe so many people are happier at this dispensation, or where we are in our 37th year, as compared to when we had our first year of independence. But like I said, you can see it. You said not about infrastructure, but all that is part and parcel of our development over the 37-year period. And based on what has transpired over that period, it tells us we must use that as a barometer to thrust ourselves forward and upward.
You know, Dr. Bartlett, before you take a go at it, when I asked a question and you heard it, you sense it was a difficult question?
You're directing that at me? Or?
Yes. I was saying before you take a go at the question, when I asked it, though it sounded rather simple, just a few words, you sense it was very difficult to answer?
Not necessarily.
Okay, go ahead.
I just sense it was rather general.
Yeah.
But if you would like to repose it, then I could, could you just, for the benefit,
No,
I get it right?
Yeah.
I like to get things right, so I don't want to be off like...
No, I said that we are on the outskirts of the 37th anniversary of independence, September 19th. And I just wanted to know what your thoughts were in terms of our development, advancement, not so much in terms of buildings, infrastructure, and that kind of thing, because we hear about those things almost every hour. But let us, what are your thoughts on our human development, the capacity that we have now.
Good. Okay, so I'm with you. Indeed, I think that we have come a long way. When we got independence, I wasn't here that year. I was off in Jamaica, I think, and so I missed the initiation into our adulthood as it relates to a nation. But since then, I've kept track. I've not necessarily been documenting, the way we've been going, but I've been quite aware of where we've been going. And if you were to look at the Human Development Index, we rank pretty high compared to other countries, so I think in that regard we're doing well. My disappointment as to where we are now is that we have not been able to achieve quite a bit of the goals that have been set as sustainable development goals. It's one thing for us to have this and have that, but if they're not, if it's not sustainable, then someone like today, I would probably be comfortable, or if you were to describe the category in which I may fall, you may say that I might be in the lower middle class. But if tomorrow I were to be faced with some kind of exigency, then I just might end up as a poor person, because what I have, is so fleeting, it's not really sustainable. And I'm hoping that, we'll be able to get more serious about these goals as we pursue these goals for everyone, to apply for everyone to be able to meet these objectives, or these goals rather. Politically, I find that we are too divided as a people. From the inception of independence to this point, I know things used to be different as it relates. So how we related to one another politically. We are so divided now, 37 years, and that I don't think is promoting our democracy in any way. And we have been divided in a way that is the people who are ended up being the ones who are suffering for the division that has been created. So as it relates to the achievements that we would have made in terms of getting the capacity, at least in terms of building the human capacity, I think that we have done well. There's still some scope for us, because we are still hearing about deficiencies in the skills, in the area of skills. We still can't get a plumber to come, for 2 weeks. If you had an issue that'll pipe broken, we don't have enough people who are in the skills area. And I'm hoping that, we recognize, at least by now, we would have recognized that, understand that we'll be building a TVEC building over in Gingerland, I think over by the high school over there. And so our people are underway, I think, to maybe satisfying that deficiency. But overall, I think as a people that we have progressed, but I think that we still have some work to do.
I find it interesting, Dr. Bartlett, the couple of points you made, especially when you spoke about the political advancement and the division into what we're doing with that is concerned. And I noted here, as you were speaking, and a lot of us know where this comes from, come let us reason together. And I don't know, I wonder in how much of that we do. That's point one that I jotted down. And the other point that I jotted down from your input was the part about the, what was it? The resilience of our people. And they're being tested now. The COVID, the current situation right now, is testing our people's resilience, is it not?
Sure.
Not with regards to maybe the buildings, etc., and so on, but how can we cope with the difficult situations and so on? So it is a good test for us as a people. So I thought those were two very important points.
Yes, Webo, and I think the last time we were here, I would have pointed out the importance of family, because I think you had asked the question last time as to what is it we would have learned during this COVID experience. And I think one of the things that I would have mentioned would have been the value of having family, the value of us, working together. And I think you can never overstate that. We have to find a way that we all come together to work together. I find that we have too many fragments in the society, and we should be all looking after each other, and not just us looking towards the politician to look after us, because it seems like that is, what the order of the day. A man would cuss his mother and his sister, but he would look to the politician to support him. When you fall on hard times, really home is where it's at. It's just today I was reading an article and it stated that in the US, 52% of the young adults now live with their parents, and that is something that has been forced on them. Before COVID, you had, like, it was in the 40s, percentage that of young who were living with their parents, but people have been forced back home. Here, I don't think we have that luxury. Once you would have left home, you have left home, because charting your own course. And we don't have that luxury of falling back on family, because families here are becoming very fragmented. And that is something that I think that, affects me in a way that I sometimes get emotional about, because I don't find that in us pursuing whatever dream it is, I guess you can call it the Federation dream, we're leaving family behind, and I think that is one of the building blocks, for us to achieve the goals that we set out. And even as I made reference to the Sustainable Development Goals, this is not an individualistic kind of approach that we can have to it. It must be a collective thing. It must be about society, supporting, or the members of society supporting each other.
And the independence, again, 37 years, are we satisfied that it is celebration as a nation, or is it that, depending on which party is in power at the given time, you celebrate? Is it a situation such as that? For instance, if your party is in power and they have the Independence Parade, then you'll find en masse those party supporters at the celebrations. And then perchance an election is held the next year and it changes. Then en masse you would not see those people there, but a different set.
Yes, and that is regrettable. And I really think that the onus is on the politicians to really make a difference as it relates to that. Because if they're not showing an example, then their followers would not, act accordingly. It's very regrettable, like I said. You go in the park and it's those people who are in power now and their friends, they're the ones who would be drinking and eating, and you can't live, you can't build a community with just half of the people at any one time. And that is why we don't have anything that is sustainable. Today for me, tomorrow for you. It's a cycle. It's like a political. Every time you replace a government, people have to start over again. The people who thought they had secure jobs, they no longer have jobs, and so they now have to start again. They have to, for the next 10 years, sometimes have to, sometimes have to weather some really harsh, times. And that those kind of things don't build a nation. They do not build a nation.
So having separated them thus, we got some work to do?
We have a lot of work to do.
Right, because the reason why you see I pose a question is because I have found through the years that when we focus on our achievements, they are largely what, to use your term, use what you sort of suggested, what Edric veered off into. And I have found that a lot of the times, like I said, and that is why I deliberately asked the question to see whether or not we can stay focused on this particular area, because we focus so much on the other area. I wanted to know whether or not the other area that you have pointed out, Dr. Bartlett, is not as important as well.
Well, maybe Stanley should get an opportunity to answer that. But it is indeed important, because you have all these structures and people, and then Stanley seem to think that most of the people are happy. I don't know what index, what happy index is, what you had used to measure that, because I think you say you have a way of measuring it now. So I don't know how we arrived at that, but it always seems as if half of the people are happy and half of the people not happy, and that's not. We should all be happy, and we should all be happy all of the time, irrespective of who is in power.
But to be fair, Stanley dexterously formulated his own question and then answered it. You agree with that? Right, Stanley?
Well, I see things different from both of you.
But that's what I'm saying.
All right.
You're just supporting what I said.
And based on what Pat brought to the fore, we grew up and knowing that we had to be somewhat pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, we have attempted to abandon that and beginning to follow the politicians, which is a detrimental road, detrimental avenue, and therefore those who got it inculcated in them, for them to set yourself up, prepare yourself for the long haul, and do what you have to do to ensure that when time comes, you don't find yourself in a job for 10 years and then out of a job for the next 10 years.
So, but you find that that is what is happening, and you're suggesting to persons they must veer away from that.
They should.
But that's exactly the point that I was talking about from at the beginning. And that's exactly what I wanted to find out, whether or not we are to focus on this particular area. Your principles and your philosophies are to change so that you can understand that if your development as a person is rooted in sound philosophy and principles, you can get away from that and still eventually achieve the material stuff. No?
You will.
Okay.
Because you see, we are not static, we are dynamic, but there are certain people who got a mindset, and that mindset is what's going to run them into trouble all the time.
So in effect then, you're saying that 37 years on, you would like to see us take a little diversion and move towards such things such as you just suggested.
Quite so, and I think we were there before independence.
Okay, let me take this.
We were
Good
there before
evening.
independence.
Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening, Mr. Weber. Good evening to your panel.
Good evening.
You asked a question about independence. Two things I want to talk about. One, I like what the lady said when she said that who party in power, some people go to the park and some people don't. And again, based on the politicians, that's been going on for too long. But I guess when you have some politician who is thin-skinned and not mature enough to understand that they're the leaders or the leader and to lead, this is the problem with our problem with independence.
Caller, could I ask you a question based on a point you just made?
Sir.
You said that has been going on too long. About how long you think it has been going on?
Well, as far as I see, ever since we went to independence.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
That is the fact.
Yes, yeah, I just wanted to get an idea, but continue your point.
That's the fact. The other
Yes.
problem is concerning the reopening of school, Mr. Weber. You see, some of the time when you have to say, some people, I don't understand why we are behaving in this form. Then the lady said a while ago, everything for some of us is politics. Depending on who bring the message, it becomes politics. But we're not looking at down the barrel. Now we are opening school, Mr. Weber. They're saying to us it is not the norm. I listen to you guys, they're saying the same thing. It is not the norm. Okay, Mr. Weber? But I went to a meeting last Thursday. One meeting before school opens tomorrow. One meeting. But yet it is not the norm. So if it's not the norm, why we don't have 3 or 4 meetings to comply ideas from everybody? You put it together and you go to the ministry will go and come back with the ideas. But instead, we had one meeting last Thursday, Mr. Weber. And all the ladies saying, well, it is the ministry. Now, Mr. Weber, you're talking, people say politics. We had umpteen a town hall meeting. Every community center was having meetings during the election. So why we couldn't have the same? I'm talking to a lady, so she's the head for the PTA. But they had one meeting. So, Mr. Weber, this is the corona. This is serious thing.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, Mr. Weber.
The lady who you spoke to was the head of the PTA?
Yeah.
And she is saying that they had one meeting.
One-way meeting.
And
Matter of
she
fact, I can tell you-
work
I'm
with me.
telling you-
Work with me.
Yes.
And she was expressing satisfaction.
She said the same thing. She thinks we should have more meetings.
Okay, but she is the head of the PTA,
Yeah.
and she thinks that they should have more meeting.
They should have, the people for the school should have more meetings.
And she is the head of the
Well, that is
PTA.
for the PTA for their school.
Okay, continue.
So I'm saying, Mr. Weber, we should have more meeting. The ministry should have more meeting with the parents. Because guess what they tell us last week, Thursday? Some of the kids will not be going out to the school to buy anything. Now, how can you plan for that, Weber, from last Thursday to this Wednesday? Explain to me how can the parents plan for that. You have kids who are going to be, you know how we be with children, Mr. Weber. It is not the norm. Here we go again. But yet we still want to use the same set of people for not the norm. We sit down and plan the way forward for the opening of school? As one lady asked the question again. What if the corona come back? You spend up all this money. What's going to happen?
Caller, might I ask you also, based on some of the points that you just made, and the theme that we've been discussing a bit, what is your view, apart from the infrastructural development, material and so on, what is your view on the human development 37 years on?
You mean concerning independence?
Yeah, concerning, yes, us as a people.
Well, as a people, Mr. Weber, we come a long way.
Hmm.
We as a people come a long way. But again, we could have been, as the lady said, we are too divided. We come a long way as a people in terms of we as the people, there's a lot of stuff we're not meant for us as a people. But we still on the divided section. Depends on what you say and who say. And again, the people themselves, are we really independent? Are we free to express ourselves as we like to?
Do you think we are?
I don't think so, Mr. Weber.
So you think we are somewhat oppressed?
Do you think what?
Do you think we are somewhat oppressed?
Very oppressed.
By whom?
I'm wondering.
By who?
By the leaders.
The leaders. So we are being oppressed by our own selves.
This present leader.
We used to say that we are oppressed by the slave masters, colonial masters, and so on and so forth. So we are glad that we are now independent. Are you expressing the view that we are still being in the same situation, enslaved, oppressed, and so on, but we are enslaved and oppressed by us?
We are still oppressed.
By us?
By our own, especially the present leader today. That's the fact.
But especially the present leader today,
Yeah.
but by all?
I wouldn't say by all.
Okay, and which period of time we were not oppressed?
Between 1995 to 2015,
I got you.
we was free and fair. I mean, you were seeing it, Mr. Weber, it was fair.
Oh, really?
Well, you could remember, hold on, Mr. Weber, you could remember June 11 used to work with you. What happened?
And
Who called to fire him?
who do what?
Who called to fire him?
What do you mean?
Okay.
He was fired?
You're speaking to me, no, that is you. You're speaking to Mr. Curtis Cook. Remember what happened to me at the airport?
I'm speaking to Mr. Curtis Crook.
Remember what happened to me at the airport?
But work with me. Maybe it's time for a light moment, but you're not a crook.
No, that's just a last name.
That's just a last name. I'm Weber Herbert.
Okay, Mr. Weber.
But work with me. I'm a Herbert.
Yeah.
So that's not just a last name.
No, probably not. I don't think you're the last name. You're not.
Anyway,
Mr. Weber,
go ahead. Yes, a serious note. Go ahead.
One last thing before I go, Mr. Weber. Okay? You got some of these young fellas and young men in this country. And this thing is dear to me, Mr. Weber. I'm going to say this tonight. You have a lot of these young men, some of these men in this country, not young men, big men, going around troubling young girls. Mr. Weber, it needs to stop. These guys who think it's okay to prey on young girls, they need to stop. Listen again, Mr. Weber. You got these young fellas in this country. They live in the neighborhood. They are around us. Troubling these young...
So you know about it?
Huh?
You know about it? The statement that you...
This is why I'm saying it to you.
Yeah. Well, so then why can't you answer? So you know about it?
Yes, Mr. Weber.
And what are you doing about it?
Well, I'm doing what I can. I'm going all the way with it.
Which is what?
Going to the authorities
Okay.
and taking it where it's supposed to.
Okay, so why don't you do this then? When you have done the procedure and you get some results, why don't you let us know?
Definitely, Mr. Weber.
Okay.
Definitely. But I'm just
All
saying,
right.
though,
But I just wanted to clarify.
all I'm saying to Mr. Weber, these guys need to be exposed.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, let's go ahead with the process and the procedure
Yes,
that
you.
you're
But I'm
right.
saying, because of
But
the
well,
name,
so
I'm saying-
that's what I'm agreeing with you. So I've just given you the roadmap in which we'll do it, right?
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so I wanted to make a point when you were mentioning something about Junie, right?
Mhm.
I know I gave you the option or the opportunity to say what you were saying, but I noticed you didn't, because you know why? Because I would have been here to correct you. And that happens a lot, right?
Yeah.
That happens a lot. People make statements when the persons who are involved or who know are not there. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So thank you very much.
No problem, Mr. Weber. I'll be listening.
Right.
Well,
Yeah, Edric, let me just take this quick break and come right back. This is Thought That Get Results. 1-869-469-1616 or 1700 if you'd like to be a part of the discussion. We'll be back after these.
Builders Paradise is doing it again by offering a blowout sale on granite, cheaper than tiles and Formica on your counter. The man has gone crazy again. A full slab of granite is on sale for as little as $599.99. Yes! Builders Paradise also offers a special delivery for your granite. So make use of this golden opportunity while stocks last. Visit Builders Paradise today at the C.A. Paul Southwell Industrial Site, St. Kitts, or call them at 466-4938 so they can help you complete your home. Builders Paradise, where your island dreams come true.
Back in this episode of Thought That Get Results with Dr. Patricia Bartlett, Edric W. Stanley. Your phone calls on 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. Mr. Stanley.
well, based on my knowing some of our history, or part of our history, leaders will emerge. The name become recognized or a household word, and people follow those names for a while. A while could be 5 years, 10 years, as the case might be.
Stanley, let me just take this and then I'll come back to you. Thank you for holding. Could you go ahead?
Good evening
Yes.
to you and your panel. Mr. Herbert, I think one of the unfortunate facts that we must face is that the psyche of the country has changed since independence. Right? We have turned our country's motto on its head. Instead of country above self, it is now self above anything else. You know, we have become very individualistic and selfish. Right? It's not, nowadays it's what you want, what's in it for me, right? Nobody is prepared to make sacrifices for the common good, right? Once ago, our forefathers were prepared to make those sacrifices to make sure that the next generation had it better than them.
Once ago, meaning before independence?
Yes,
Uh-huh.
right.
Well,
No,
so, okay, so the period beginning in independence, we continue that same thing as well?
the period, no.
So from...
We concentrated more, I think then we concentrated more on the materialistic. And there's no question.
Now, what I want to put in chronology, right,
Yeah.
is you said that we become individualistic, etc. So I wanted to know if that was since independence we have become that way.
Since independence.
Since okay, go
And
ahead.
you know what too? There is a particular event which you can argue that it was inevitable, right? But there was a particular event that I think caused this. And that was the advent of cable TV, essentially, right? When all of a sudden our wants, our desires, the consumerism, everything changed, okay? And we started looking at North American and European tastes. We started wanting things that we couldn't really afford. To me, that is when there was a paradigm shift, so to speak.
Okay, you have a timeline that you think?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, about what?
Cable TV.
80s, 90s?
That would have been in the 80s, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that would have been in the 80s.
So the root question that we were addressing, you think that materialistically we have gone pretty good, but in terms of our psyche, as you said, and philosophy and Dr. Bartlett mentioned family.
Values.
Yes, you think that we wanted.
Spoke about, those are esoteric and people don't even understand them and don't want to understand them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I'm saying that even though our forefathers were less educated, supposedly less educated, they were more grounded.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they knew exactly what needed to be done for the future generation.
And so,
I
you will advance. You will advocate for us to pay attention to these particular areas.
Yes, absolutely. But I don't know. I don't know if you're too far gone. I mean, one of the offshoots of that, for instance, is this idea that you what is right is what you can get away with. Okay, our sense of what is right and wrong seems to be out the door, and there's a lack of accountability and things like transparency.
And you've been looking at that for a while.
Yes,
you've been observing it for a while.
I've noticed it for a while.
And have you any sense of where it could have gone wrong? Who's responsible or anything?
Well, I mean, that's the interesting part. The leadership of all the parties recognize the fact that we took a wrong turn somewhere. And if you look at their manifestos since in the 90s, you would see that they include things which require us to adopt good governance systems to make everybody accountable, to have open and honest government, integrity, and that sort of thing. But it is never operationalized, okay? And, we should ask ourselves why.
So, in essence, we know what needs to be done, but we don't do it?
All of us, all the parties.
Caller, let me, we're running out of time. Can I go and get someone else?
Sure.
Okay, thanks very much. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Good night, Mr. Weber.
Yes.
Good night to your panelists. How many do you have?
2.
Virtually or otherwise?
2.
All right.
Yes.
Now, I tuned in when I heard my good villager, Curtis, and then Mr. McMahon. You asked me the question about the development of our human resources.
Yes.
Since independence.
Yes.
It has been quite impressive. Quite impressive. Both on the national front and on the diaspora front. I recall I went to UWI in 82. By 83, once we became independent, we were given a lot more scholarships. A lot of divisions and kitchens today who hold positions Because before time, it was the handful who were affiliated, closely affiliated with the political parties who were given a chance to get further education. Now, I always find this question about television being detrimental. It has helped a lot, you know. It has given the ordinary man an opportunity to see what living is like outside of a parochial country like St. Kitts. Any ordinary person will tell you now what's going on in Europe, what's going on. You understand? It offers opportunity for education too. So I don't know where we have this cane field mentality, you know, and what happened to the phone? I recall when I was at UWI, there was the question about why should we give our people tertiary education. That was a discussion. And I recall Mr. Harper. You heard about Mr. Harper?
Yes.
Did Harper? He died. He was an individual Kittitian from Keyon, whichever way. He used to be one of the lecturers at UWI.
Well, he taught here in Nevis.
Hello?
He taught here in Nevis.
Right. And you know, Dr. Sim came to the university in Jamaica. And Mr. Harper made a request. He said, some may say you are educating for export, but he said, do not stop it. Do not stop it. And we have now in the diaspora, and even coming back, a number of our people, look how many doctors and whatever. It used to be one. Anybody child could be a doctor, anybody child could be a lawyer.
Caller, you think the fact that you see it from those lenses and point it out that way, and another person maybe looking at it from another set of lens and conclude something else, you think it can be described as the different expectations?
No, because you see, we look at things from our own perspective, eh?
Right, so what I'm saying is that the persons who probably pointed out that we have not achieved certain things and so on and so forth, could it be that we might have achieved certain things as you pointed out, but their expectations might have been higher?
I think it was more opportunities, you know, because I mean, I always had expectation for the teachers' college in 71, 72. You follow?
Yes.
But if you really look at it, the number of skills, I am quite impressed when I hear the young people talking about the things they could do today. I mean, it is far from what I might have envisaged in 83. I mean, we got to be realistic. All of these artists, artisans, technicians.
Right, but just for the debate's sake, the callers that you referred to, for instance, they might be appreciating what you said, but their expectation might have been more. That's what
I know the expectation. They are from the one party, rule the whole federation, from Mr. Bracha until Jesus come back. You listen to their discourse. From 1995 to 2014. I mean, which country we live in?
Yes. Yeah, okay. All right, thanks.
But we have come a long way, and
Yes.
we should be proud of our people. We are now holding down top positions, financial, in every sector. All right, then.
Okay, thanks much. Edric.
Yes, well, what I was saying is that based on the charisma of a particular person coming as an indigenous Kittitian, Nevian, as the case might be, they would, if in fact, work toward galvanizing themselves and bring along people with them, and consequently, you get what is called the division in the society. And it's happening. Sadly, it was there long before independence, 83. But as people get more educated, and understand exactly what's going on, you find that the other charismatic person who was up and coming eventually surpasses the one that was there. And now you got, it looks like Grand Canyon, a gulf with reference to division. But it is not different from what it was before. The last person mentioned our charismatic leader, Honorable Bradshaw. And then you had Dr. Kennedy Simmons who came, but before him, we had other people. But this is what's happening. As people become more educated, people become with a certain amount of understanding, knowledge, and they get the power, make money. That's what is become so obvious today, that we have a gulf, seemingly. But a gulf was always there. It was always there.
So we in a sense have not made much progress out of the gulf.
In that regard. But
we in
academically,
that regard, in terms of advancing in a more higher vein or plane,
right,
be able to think.
Right, we are
right.
attempting to go forward and upward
But we
onto a higher
can't get out,
platform.
but we can't get out of that gulf.
That gulf will always be there because you have these charismatic leaders who up and coming, and they would always woo people to their side, as the case might be, and then you have competition. The population has grown to the extent where now we see the PAM, we see the Labour Party, we see the Unity Party.
So they're all in the gulf trying to get out, but they just remain there.
Well,
Dr. Bartlett?
the gulf is still there.
The gulf is still there.
The unfortunate thing about what I see happening, though, Webo, is that people are not necessarily divided along ideological, lines. Is not that I believe in something based on principle, and you believe in something that is maybe opposing to that. It is based on just personalities, and that is what Stanley, I think, has attempted to outline. He's talking about charismatic this and charismatic that. I mean, charismatic leader is not the end all, If there isn't anything that is going to divide us on ideological lines, I don't think we should be divided. Because if we all think the same way, why are we then divided? Because I have not seen anything in any particular party, and I have looked at the way they operate. I don't see the ideological differences. So it means that we're just being tribal.
So finally, Mr. Stanley, so we got some work to do in that particular area to get, as the hit that you've made tonight, to get out of the gulf.
Webo, we are not going to get out of that gulf
If
simply
we follow
because of the dynamics. Everybody is attempting to lead, and those who emerge as the leader will continue to woo and keep those people around him or her, as the case might be. And
But should we not advance beyond that, though?
we should, but
We should, because we're bright
We should.
enough. I think every speaker tonight has spoken to the fact that we are so much more educated. So what are we doing with that education that we have? We're still finding politicians because of charisma who dividing us. It's about time that we really put to use the education that we have, the exposure that we have. But the people who are most educated, I find that they're not necessarily engaged in the process. They sit back because for them, politics has become such a sport, a blood sport, some people refer to it as, and it's in the people who are inside, they're not necessarily people who are necessarily guided by conscience and guided about the goodwill about everybody. They want to be able to just have people who are dependent on them. In an independent society, you have too many people who are dependent on this, on politics or the politicians. In an independent society, you not to have more
But
independence.
charisma has always been an ace card to use, right?
Yes.
Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Yes,
You got a half a minute.
yeah, the post
Caller, you.
Yeah, I'm moving away. Yeah, we both that we are uneducated people. But what we're doing with the education, as you like to say, the leaders, they are spinning, trying to outdo one another, trying to override one another to see who can get above the other. That's what they're doing with the education. And instead of working together and to bring a oneness, instead of being so divided in politics, that's what we're doing with the education, trying to outdo one another.
Okay. All right, thank you. Interesting. Okay, we're making way for Leadership Matters. Dr. Abati, do you want to have a quick last word?
Yes, I just want to appeal to everyone to remember what our country motto is, and let us be guided accordingly.
That's the last word from Dr. Patricia Bartlett. This program repeats tomorrow at 10 o'clock following the VON News Minute. Join the Honorable Mark Brantley tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock for On the Mark. Thank you all again for joining us. This is your voice in the community. Talk that get results. We now go to Leadership Matters.
Over the coming week,